It's funny the things that stick with you. I don't remember the exact date I placed my first real bet, the one that started it all, but I remember the way the kitchen smelled on the Sunday morning before everything went wrong. It smelled of cinnamon and coffee, a weekly ritual. My wife would be humming to the radio, flipping pancakes, and my daughter would be meticulously setting the table, making sure every fork was perfectly aligned. My son, still small enough to ride on my shoulders, would be helping me by pointing out all the things in the garden he wanted to investigate later. We had a good life, a life built not on extravagant wealth, but on a foundation of careful planning and mutual respect. I had a stable job in logistics, good enough to afford a comfortable mortgage, a reliable car, and family holidays every summer. We had a budget, we stuck to it. We had investments, a modest portfolio of shares and a small, almost forgotten amount of Bitcoin we'd bought on a whim years ago that had surprisingly grown. We had insurance for everything. I was a man who believed in safety nets, in planning for the worst. My life was a testament to sensible risk management. The irony is that I dismantled it all with the most reckless behavior imaginable. It began as a way to blow off steam. A few of the guys from work had an online poker night once a week. $20 buy-in just for fun, for bragging rights. It was harmless, but I was good at it. I could read people even through a screen. I understood the math, the probability. I started winning consistently. The money was negligible, but the feeling wasn't. It was a jolt, a sense of validation that I was smarter, quicker, more cunning than the others. That feeling was the seed. Soon, the weekly game wasn't enough. I found other online casinos, other games. Blackjack, roulette, and then the slots. Slots were the most insidious. They required no skill, just the willingness to feed the machine. I opened a separate bank account, a little secret slush fund for my hobby. My first big loss was $500 on a single hand of blackjack. I felt sick, not just at the loss of money, but at the thought of having to explain it. But I couldn't explain it. So I lied for the first time. When my wife asked why I was so quiet that evening, I blamed it on a stressful project at work. The lie came easily, too easily, and it worked. She rubbed my shoulders and told me not to worry. Her sympathy felt like a betrayal on my part. I promised myself I would win the 500 back and then stop, just go back to the weekly poker game. That promise was the second lie. I chased the loss. I deposited more money that should have gone towards our credit card bill. I got lucky. A streak on the roulette table brought me back to even, and then some. The relief was a tidal wave. It washed away the guilt and replaced it with a dangerous sense of power. I hadn't just made a mistake and gotten away with it. I had faced a problem and solved it. I had proven to myself that I could control the chaos. This became the pattern. I would lose, feel the panic and the shame, and then I would bet more, driven by a desperate need to get back to zero, to erase the transgression before my wife could ever find out. The secret started to build, creating a whole hidden architecture inside our marriage. I memorized the dates our bank statements arrived so I could get to the mailbox first. I cleared my browser history with religious fervor. My phone, once a shared device for family photos, became a private fortress protected by a passcode she didn't know. I was living a double life under my own roof. I was the loving husband who discussed kindergarten applications and grocery lists, and I was the frantic gambler, checking odds on my phone in the bathroom, my heart pounding as a digital wheel spun on a screen thousands of miles away. My wife, the most observant person I know, sensed the shift. I was there physically, but my mind was elsewhere. She would be telling me about her day, and I would nod and make the right noises, but I wouldn't hear a word. I'd be replaying a bad beat in my head, calculating how much I needed to deposit to chase my mounting losses. "You seem so far away lately," she said one night as we lay in bed. The space between us felt like a mile-wide canyon. I pulled her close and whispered apologies, blaming work, stress, anything but the truth. I hated myself in those moments, hated the man I was becoming. But the hate wasn't strong enough to make me stop. The lies started to bleed into our finances. I suggested we switch to a different bank for our main checking account, citing better interest rates. The real reason was that our old bank's online interface made it too easy to see transaction histories. I convinced her to let me take over managing our small investment portfolio, arguing that my analytical mind from my logistics job could get us better returns. In reality, I was slowly, secretly liquidating our future, cashing out shares to fund my present addiction. I felt like a saboteur, carefully planting charges at the base of the life we had built together, all while smiling and assuring my family that everything was perfectly safe. The initial thrill of winning was long gone, replaced by a desperate, grinding need to just break even. The fun had evaporated, leaving only the grim mechanics of the addiction, the deposits, the bets, the losses, the lies. I wasn't playing to win anymore. I was playing to survive, to keep the secret for one more day, to postpone the inevitable moment when the world I had built on lies would finally come crashing down. That Sunday morning, with the kitchen smelling of cinnamon and love, was one of the last truly peaceful moments. As I sat there, laughing as my son smeared syrup all over his face, a part of me knew it was a mirage. I was a ghost at my own family breakfast, and it was only a matter of time before they all saw right through me. The architecture of my lies grew more complex. A second full-time job I had to manage with meticulous, exhausting detail. My days became a frantic ballet of deception. I juggled payments between 3 secret credit cards, moving debt around like a shell game to keep any one of them from maxing out and triggering a concerned phone call. I became an expert at intercepting the mail, knowing the exact time the postman came, often, coincidentally, being outside to grab it before my wife could. Any official-looking envelope sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through my veins, a mix of terror and a strange, sick thrill. I was the risk manager who had abandoned all principles of risk management for his own life, turning our family's security into a high-stakes gamble where the house always had the edge. The emotional cost of this deception was corroding me from the inside out, and the fallout was poisoning my family, even if they didn't know the source of the toxin. My moods became entirely dependent on the outcomes of my bets. A win would make me euphoric, a generous, happy-go-lucky husband and father. I'd come home and suggest we order expensive takeout, or I'd buy the kids a new toy, a desperate attempt to paper over my guilt with moments of manufactured joy. But a loss, which was happening far more frequently, would turn me into a monster. I was sullen, irritable, and short-tempered. A spilled glass of milk could trigger a disproportionate flash of anger. I would snap at my wife for asking a simple question, then retreat into a stony, impenetrable silence. She started to walk on eggshells around me, her and the kids. I could see the confusion and hurt in their eyes. They didn't know what they had done wrong because they had done nothing wrong. The problem was me. I was a stranger in their home, my personality being dictated by the random spin of a digital roulette wheel. I remember my daughter's 6th birthday party with a clarity that still haunts me. We had filled the backyard with balloons and a bouncy castle. All our friends and family were there. It should have been a perfect day. But I had a huge amount of money riding on a horse race that afternoon. I kept sneaking away from the party, hiding in the garage with my phone, my hands shaking as I refreshed the results page. I missed her blowing out her candles because I was watching a grainy live stream of a horse I'd never seen on a track I'd never visit. My wife found me. She didn't say anything, she just gave me a look. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was a look of profound disappointment and a flicker of fear. She knew something was deeply wrong, even if she couldn't name the disease. I muttered a pathetic excuse about a work emergency and rejoined the party, plastering a fake smile on my face. I sang Happy Birthday with everyone else, but my voice felt like it belonged to someone else. The guilt was a physical presence, sitting on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The financial lies became more audacious. Our savings account, the one we had diligently built for emergencies, was the first casualty. I drained it over the course of a few months, transferring small amounts to my secret account, convincing myself each time that this would be the last time, that the next big win was just around the corner and I would replenish it all before she ever noticed. When she did ask why the balance was so low, I fabricated a story about a major, unexpected repair needed for the foundations of the house, complete with a forged invoice I created on my computer. I felt a twisted sense of pride at my own ingenuity, even as the self-loathing ate away at me. I was no longer just a gambler. I was a forger, a thief, stealing from my own family. The small portfolio of shares and crypto was next. I told her I was concerned about market volatility and that we should cash out and hold the money in a high-interest savings account for a while. That account was, of course, my betting account. The passive income we had been so proud of was gone in a weekend of bad bets on football games. The conversations about our future, once filled with excitement and possibility, became minefields I had to navigate with extreme caution. When she talked about wanting to renovate the kitchen or plan a big trip for our 10th anniversary, I would have to invent reasons to delay, to be fiscally prudent. I, the man who was throwing thousands of dollars away on the turn of a card, was lecturing my wife on the importance of a household budget. The gaslighting was perhaps the cruelest part. Her intuition was screaming at her that something was wrong, and I was actively trying to convince her she was crazy. "Why are you so worried about money all the time? You need to relax," I would tell her, my voice dripping with false reassurance. "You're imagining things. Everything is fine." I was making her doubt her own sanity to protect my addiction. I was isolating her in our own marriage, making her feel like the source of the tension that I had created. The breaking point for my secret operation came when I ran out of our money to use. I was deep in a hole, a chasm of debt that felt inescapable. The only way out, my addict brain screamed, was to go bigger. I needed a significant stake to place a bet large enough to win it all back in one go. That's when I made the decision that would seal our fate. I went to our bank, and applied for a home equity line of credit against our house. Our house. The place where my children slept, the single greatest symbol of our family's security and hard work. Because my name was also on the deed and my credit was, on the surface, still good, the initial application was approved pending a final review and her signature. I forged her signature. I practiced it for hours on a spare piece of paper until it was perfect. I submitted the documents online. A few days later, a significant sum of money, a sum that represented the very walls that sheltered my family, appeared in my secret account. I felt a dizzying mix of terror and exhilaration. I had crossed a line from which there was no return. This was it, one last bet. A high-stakes poker tournament online. I was good at poker. This was skill, not just luck. This was my chance to be the hero, to fix everything, to undo all the damage I had done. As I sat down at my computer that night with my family sleeping peacefully upstairs, I truly believed I was doing it for them. I was about to risk their home, their future, their entire world, and I had convinced myself it was an act of love. The online poker tournament was a blur of adrenaline and anxiety. For hours, I rode the waves of fortune, my chip stack growing and shrinking with each hand. I was focused, playing the best I had in my life, driven by the desperate conviction that this was my one shot at redemption. I made it to the final table. The prize money in sight was more than enough to pay off the line of credit and all my other debts, with plenty left over to put everything back the way it was. I could already taste the relief. I could picture the moment I would sit my wife down and confess, not as a broken failure, but as a flawed man who had made a mistake but had heroically fixed it. It was all a fantasy. I got into a massive hand, a coin flip situation, my tournament life hanging on a single card. For a moment, I was ahead. Then the final card was dealt on the virtual river, and just like that, it was over. My opponent's hand had miraculously improved, and my mountain of chips vanished. The screen flashed, "You have been eliminated." The silence that followed was absolute. The home equity line of credit, the money that represented the very roof over our heads, was gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the blank screen, the weight of what I had done crushing me. There was no plan B. The hero fantasy evaporated, leaving behind the cold, stark reality of a man who had just gambled away his family's home. The days that followed were a waking nightmare. I was a ghost, moving through the motions of my life with a profound sense of dread. The bank would be sending the official paperwork for the line of credit to our house any day now. My carefully constructed world of lies was about to be obliterated, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to think of another lie, a bigger, more elaborate story to explain it away, but my mind was empty. I was out of tricks, out of deceptions. I was just a man waiting for the executioner's axe to fall. It fell on a Thursday. I came home from work, and I knew the moment I saw her face. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared countless family meals. In front of her was an opened envelope from our bank. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her face was a mask of calm, cold fury that was far more terrifying than any outburst. She slid the letter across the table. It was a welcome letter for our new home equity line of credit, complete with the forged signature on the application copy. "I called the bank," she said, her voice chillingly steady. "They were very helpful. They explained the whole process. They even congratulated me on the withdrawal we made yesterday." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for an answer, but I had none. The truth came out, not in a rush, but in a slow, agonizing confession as she interrogated me with the precision of a surgeon. Every lie I had ever told her was laid bare on that kitchen table. The savings account, the investments, the secret credit cards, the years of deception. With every admission, I could see something breaking behind her eyes. It wasn't just about the money. I had stolen so much more than that. I had stolen our shared past, retroactively poisoning every memory with my lies. I had stolen our security, our children's future. But worst of all, I had stolen her trust, the very bedrock of our marriage. When I was done, she finally spoke. "Who are you?" she asked, the same question I had asked myself 1,000 times. "The man I married would never do this. The father of my children would never put them at risk like this. So who are you?" She stood up and walked to the phone. I thought she was calling her mother or her lawyer. She called the police. She reported the forgery, the fraudulent line of credit. In that moment, she was no longer my wife protecting our marriage. She was a mother protecting her children from the biggest threat to their well-being, their own father. The ensuing chaos was a blur. The bank froze the account, launched a fraud investigation. Legal letters started arriving. The word foreclosure became a part of our daily reality. She moved into the guest room, and the silence in the house was a living thing, thick and suffocating. We were roommates living in a war zone of our own making. She told the kids that we were having grown-up problems, but they knew. They could feel the tension, the grief that permeated the air. My son started having nightmares. My daughter, once a bubbly, happy child, became quiet and withdrawn. They were the collateral damage of my addiction, the innocent casualties of a war I had started. The decision to leave was not a dramatic, tear-filled event. It was a quiet, practical matter of survival. She told me she was taking the children to her parents' house and that her lawyer would be in touch. She packed their favorite toys, their worn-out blankets, their entire childhoods into a few suitcases. I stood by the door, a helpless spectator at the dismantling of my own life. Before she left, she turned to me one last time. "You didn't just lose our money," she said, her voice finally breaking. "You lost us, and I don't think you'll ever understand the price we all have to pay for that." I watched her drive away, my children's faces small and confused in the rearview mirror. The front door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the empty, mortgaged silence. She was right. I had lost them. And standing there amidst the wreckage of the life I had torched, I knew that the debt I owed them was one I could never repay. The house was no longer a home. It was just a monument to my addiction. The loneliness that followed was a physical entity. It sat with me at the dinner table. It lay beside me in the empty bed. It echoed in the terrifying silence of a house that was once filled with the chaotic, beautiful noise of a family. The legal and financial fallout was swift and brutal. The bank, faced with undeniable fraud, initiated foreclosure proceedings. I was a pariah, the man who had not only squandered his family's assets but had committed a crime against them. I didn't fight it. I had no fight left in me. I signed every paper my wife's lawyer put in front of me, relinquishing all rights to the house, to what was left of our assets, to everything. It was the only thing I could do, a pathetic attempt at penance. I was forced to declare bankruptcy. The word itself felt like a brand, a permanent mark of my failure as a man, a husband, and a father. I lost the house, the car, every last trapping of the respectable life I had pretended to lead. I ended up in a small, furnished room for rent, the kind of transient place with peeling paint and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. This tiny, grim space was a perfect reflection of what my life had become, small, isolated, and with no view of a future. For months, I was adrift in a sea of self-pity and shame. I took a job working in a warehouse overnight, stacking boxes. The work was mindless and physically exhausting, which was a blessing. It left me too tired to think, too sore to feel the full extent of my emotional agony. I was just a body, a pair of hands doing a job. I sent most of my meager paycheck to my wife for child support, a small, inadequate gesture to atone for the financial cataclysm I had caused. The turning point came not as a lightning bolt, but as a slow, dawning realization. Hitting rock bottom gives you a strange kind of clarity. When you have nothing left to lose, you have no more lies to tell, especially to yourself. I started going to a support group for gambling addiction, held in the dingy basement of a community center. I didn't want to go, but I was more afraid of the loneliness than I was of the shame. For the first time, I told my story out loud from beginning to end, without any excuses or justifications. And the people in that room, strangers who had their own stories of ruin, they didn't judge me. They nodded, they understood. It was in that basement, listening to others and sharing my own truth, that I began to understand the nature of my disease. It was never about the money. The money was just a way of keeping score. It was about the escape. It was about chasing a feeling of control in a world where I felt increasingly powerless. Every bet was a temporary reprieve from the anxieties of responsibility, a secret world where only my decisions mattered. I had been so obsessed with creating financial security through concepts like investments, passive income, and a solid budget, yet I had systematically destroyed it all for a cheap thrill. The greatest asset I ever had was my family's trust, and I had leveraged it, bet it, and lost it completely. I started the long, painful process of rebuilding. Not my finances, because that seemed impossible, but my character. I worked my shift, I went to my meetings, I paid my rent, and I sent the child support. It was a monotonous, unglamorous existence. There were no highs, but there were no soul-crushing lows either. There was just the steady, quiet rhythm of taking responsibility. After almost a year, I wrote my ex-wife a letter. I didn't ask for forgiveness or a second chance. I just apologized. I took full ownership of my actions, my addiction, my lies. I told her I was in recovery and that I finally understood that the price of my addiction wasn't just the money, but the safety and happiness of the people I was supposed to protect. I told her I would understand if she never wanted me to see the children again, but that I hoped one day I could prove I was no longer a danger to them. She didn't write back, but a few weeks later she called. Her voice was cautious, distant. She agreed to let me see the kids for a supervised visit at a park. Seeing them again was like taking my first breath after nearly drowning. They were older, a little shy with me at first. We threw a ball, I pushed them on the swings. There were no expensive toys or promises of grand adventures. There was just me fully present, my phone turned off in my pocket. There was no distraction, no secret agenda. It was the most honest hour I had spent with them in years. That day in the park was the beginning of a new, fragile chapter. My life is not a success story. I haven't won the lottery or started a successful new business. I still work in the warehouse. I live in a simple apartment. The debts I have are vast and will follow me for decades. My marriage is over and my ex-wife's trust in me as a partner is gone forever. But I am a father again. I see my children every other weekend. Our relationship is being rebuilt on a new foundation, one of honesty and presence. I am teaching them not with my words, but with my actions, that it is possible to make a catastrophic mess and still choose to clean it up piece by painful piece. I no longer chase the adrenaline of the win. I find my satisfaction in small, quiet victories, paying a bill on time, hearing my daughter laugh at one of my stupid jokes, seeing my son's face light up when I arrive to pick him up. I lost my marriage, my home, and my fortune. My family paid a terrible price for my addiction. But in the wreckage, I was forced to find something real to hold on to. I am no longer a gambler. I am just a man, sober and solvent, trying to be a good father. And in the quiet simplicity of that truth, I am slowly, finally finding peace. Now that you've heard the story, I want to hear yours. Comment your opinion and your country below, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more episodes like this.